Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Charitable and Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very much. You know, we always like to bring you up-to-date information. Sometimes it's not always the happiest of news, but we're always glad that Troop C is involved in taking care of what we need and keeping people safe on the highways. Welcome back to the program. Trooper Ross Brennan. Trooper, thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.
All right, and of course, Trooper, Louisiana State Police, Troop C, Public Information Officer. Tell us a little bit about this situation that some of us have kind of heard about down in Burke.
Yeah, so it kind of made the rounds on social media yesterday, but
Right.
Shortly after 4 p.m. on March 29th, we were dispatched to a fatal crash involving two vehicles on Highway 55 in the Berg area. Once troopers arrived on scene, it was kind of an unusual situation. So preliminary investigation found that a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer was traveling north on Highway 55, and at the same time, it was actually towing with a tow strap a 1992 Plymouth Voyager behind it. So the two vehicles were in tow going down the roadway. Behind the wheel of the Plymouth was a Mercedes Vincent from the Chauvin area. And for reasons still under investigation, as the vehicle in front, that Chevrolet, began to slow down, that Plymouth didn't do it and ended up going into the opposite lane of traffic towards the left side of that Chevrolet, and then suddenly steered towards the right back into the northbound lane. And by doing that, it collided with the driver's side of that Chevrolet vehicle, and both the vehicles ended up traveling off the roadway to the right, where they ended up overturning. The driver, the Chevrolet, Don Thibodeau, he was not restrained, and so during that collision and that crash and the rollover, he was ejected from his vehicle and suffered pretty critical injuries and was transported to a New Orleans area hospital for treatment. And unfortunately, Miss Vincent, she wasn't restrained as well, and she did suffer fatal injuries and died at the scene.
Wow. And again, you bring up several things that people may have questions about. First and foremost, people, I think, sometimes if you're driving and you see somebody towing somebody else, you wonder, is that legal or not? So maybe we could address that first.
So in Louisiana, we're one of the few states where it is legal for you to tow another vehicle on the roadway, whether with a rope or a chain. But we do have some requirements if you are going to do that. There has to be at least a minimum 1 foot by 1 foot, whether a flag or a red cloth, on that connection between the two vehicles if it's during the daytime hours. At nighttime, that red cloth would be replaced by a red light, and that red light has to be visible by at least 500 feet on the roadway.
Okay.
So that is at least the only requirements that we have if you are going to tow a vehicle that might be disabled or something like that. The problem with it is it's always better to trust the professionals when it comes to something like that.
Right.
And that's why tow truck companies are so important. They have that trained professional, somebody with the knowledge and equipment, but also the insurance. In case something was to go wrong, they have some type of liability coverage, things such as that. You know, sometimes with amateurs, they might not think about, you know, certain things, but these tow truck companies, not only are they trained, but state police, we also check them out and make sure that they're doing the right thing. So we actually have a motor vehicle carrier enforcement unit within state police, and we go to these tow truck companies and we make sure that they're compliant to not only state law, but also federal law, which is sometimes more strict compared to state law, and make sure that their equipment's up to code and it's safe, and that they're following the right rules and regulations.
And again, so you're capable of doing, you're able to do it, but there's a better way to do that. And for those reasons especially, you know, some may be pulling someone that's not necessarily very well trained at towing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in my family, we were taught that. We had campers and boats. You had to learn that. That was part of your driving education. Not everybody has that. I guess the second issue that comes with that, the insurance that's important, and the fact that you know that somebody who is towing you is compliant with all these state and federal guidelines. The second issue that kind of brought up with me is neither of these drivers were restrained.
Yeah.
We talk about seat belts and the importance of seat belts. This is a really great example of how we could prevent maybe some serious injury or fatal injuries if we're
And they might not have been going, I don't know all the details of what their journey was. It might have been a short journey, but even just a short time on the road, it's always better to wear that seatbelt on the road because you never know what could happen. And so if you are going to tow a vehicle with a rope, definitely make sure that you have a strong enough rope that can withstand those forces. Attach those tow points to whether it's a spot on the front of the car, a spot on the back that's designated for areas to be towed on that vehicle. Also make sure that that vehicle that's being towed is able to stop, is able to steer correctly, right? And that person who's controlling that vehicle knows how to maintain that control. And also, at any point where it feels unsafe or you're just unsure about the situation, again, pull over to the side of the road, just stop and call a professional to come and maybe try to retrieve that vehicle.
Yeah, and some really, really good points about that. I mean, if a vehicle is disabled to the point that you can't manage the steering,
Yeah.
that's not something that should be towed. If the vehicle is being pulled, can't manage to stop on its own, that vehicle shouldn't be towed.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be towed by another vehicle.
Yeah.
It should be picked up by a professional and towed by a professional. And if people are wondering, they can reach out to Troop C.
Yeah.
They can ask those questions. We need Troop C to be, like we talk about it all the time, it's about education. We need to make sure that people know that. Let's give out that information if that's all right, and how to reach out both by phone and by email.
Email, you can always email me. It's ross.brennan@la.gov. You can always call my cell phone too, 985-855-0241. If you can't remember that, you can always just Google Troop C and dial that first number that pops up. Typically, there's a directory that pops up at the beginning.
Right.
Just press 0. That'll get you in touch with that desk sergeant, and they'll be able to speak with you immediately.
And help people out. Thank you so very much for the update on this. We look forward to more updates. And again, our goal is always to have 0 fatalities. Sometimes we have to deal with those, but we're glad you guys are boots on the ground, wheels on the ground, taking care of everything for us. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Trooper, we appreciate that. All right, guys, don't go anywhere. I got a whole lot more Bayou time when we continue right after this short commercial break.